Hi, welcome to Healing Humanity. My name is Dina, and I want to talk to you today a little bit about where we're at and where we're going to go. Um, a lot of people have said to me over the years, "Tell your story, and leave it at that." Well, the thing is that I've been telling you my story straight along. My story is very, very long. It started when I was a very young girl, and it has continued to today, and it's going to continue until I take my last breath. Um, so it's hard for me, just so you understand, it's very difficult for me um, to put it all into one little package. But I'll continue to try and do my best. Maybe one day I'll come up with a narrative that will make sense to everyone and will sort of summarize everything, or in general what has occurred. But if you listen to my videos and you've read my I used to do um, a written thing, whatever they're called. Um, so I used to do those, and so I've been doing sharing my life, sharing my information for a very long time, and through my journey, I've learned so much information, and half of it, I don't even remember half of it. But one of the things I did want to share with you today is that um, something came across my path just recently. It said the illiterate of our times is not someone who can't read or write, but one who cannot interpret the signs of that are that life places on their path. That's, I guess it's in the Book of Knowledge. I've not read that book yet, but um, and I just found that so profound, because everybody wants signs, everybody wants to understand, everybody wants that, they want the gifts of God, but they don't want to do the work to get there. Everybody wants the benefit without having to go through the things that have to be done in order to get there. And those things are not easy. Living life with God and for God is a difficult path. And I don't think everyone understands that. And so, but we also have to open our eyes, right? Like we're a generation of illiterate people when it comes to God. Even the most powerful people seem to be illiterate when it comes to God. It reminds me of the Pharisee that helped Jesus along his route and tried to get him to speak at his trial, where he knew he was innocent, but also Jesus gave him an opportunity to walk the path with him, and he didn't. He chose not to, because he couldn't get rid of the life that he had. And also, just recently, I thought it was kind of interesting because I had been thinking about that, and and one of the nights that I missed church, they actually studied Matthew 16, and I started reading that tonight, and I thought, well, that's exactly what we're going through right now. I want to read a little bit of it. So it's 24 through 27. It'll go quick, but it says, "Then Jesus said to his disciples," so mind you, he's talking to his disciples exclusively, and he said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with the angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done." He continues, so 28, the final verse is, "Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Which, to me, based on my path, what I understand that to mean is that we have to, we cannot buy our soul from anyone. We have to give up the life that we know in order to walk a path with Jesus and follow him. Let him lead you wherever he needs you. And there are a lot of places that need a disciple of Jesus. A lot. There are a lot of unbelievers. There are a lot of unbelievers that are sitting in pews today, perhaps right next to you. In fact, I couldn't help but notice on Easter, I went to church, and there were so many people I had never seen before. I've never met before. And I've been going to that church now for like 3 years. And it saddened me because it was great to see everybody pile in, and it was difficult to find a seat. Fabulous, right? Great. But what troubled me is that they're not picking up their cross. They're not allowing Jesus to change their lives. They're not allowing the wisdom that's available to them to be understood. They're blind to what's available. They're the illiterate. We are all the illiterate generation, and if Jesus is telling his disciples, who we all believe in, we all honor, we think are, they've been sainted, so on and so forth. If we're looking to these people and Jesus is telling them that he's going to return, and they still are not going to taste death because of their lifestyles, because of their choices, because of their actions or non-actions. You see, I also found, in looking for wisdom, you're guided to a lot of different things. And one of the things that I was guided to recently was the 7 pillars of wisdom. The first one is the fear of the Lord. That's the beginning. That's where we all begin, right? For me, I didn't fear anything. But then I started to really watch what the Lord was doing in my life, and how things were changing, and how just watching the signs and the symptoms of people's decisions. And I did start to pray for my enemies because I was afraid of what might happen to them. Not that I particularly wanted to, initially I'm not like that, or never was. If you wronged me, you're out of my life. If you disrespected me, forget it. Forget about it. Like, that's just not forgivable, right? And I realized one day, probably several years ago, that I can't make that call. Everything that I was reading in the Bible is, forgive your enemies, pray for your enemies, so on and so forth. And I started to see little bits and pieces of what God was able to do, or what was potentially planning to do. And that frightened me. I did have to stop, and I did have to look at the whole picture of the information and the wisdom that was coming to me during those times. And I did have to pray for my enemies, and I still do today. And there's people that I know have been my enemy, and I still treat them respectfully. I don't discard them. I don't disrespect them back, because I don't want God's wrath. And I think that that's the finest fear of the Lord that there can be. And it shows up that way, through the knowledge and the understanding, and understanding his word. Perhaps you cannot regurgitate, which I can't. Perhaps you can't regurgitate the word, but if you start to dive in and you understand what he's saying, and you not only understand it, but put it to action, that is where the change happens. That is where the big changes happen. And that would be the second pillar, is knowledge and understanding. The other one is seeking counsel and following the wise advice that you're getting. So I had constantly seeking the advice of pastors and priests and others, various others, people that I know that believe, that have gifts. So seeking their advice as well, never being completely full, right? Always looking for more, more advice, more knowledge, more information. And that's the third pillar, is to seek counsel. And when you do that, the thing is you have to, on the fourth pillar, use prudence and discretion, because not all the information that you get is accurate, especially these days, right? It's not like thousands of years ago where you'd get a piece of information and you can be pretty certain that it's rock solid information. Not these days. These days, everything has been bastardized. There's like confusion thrown in everywhere. So you have to really use your inner guidance. You have to really use the history of information that you've been given, and your knowledge of the Bible as you understand it at that time, to be able to sort of to be discerning, and to understand the counsel that you're getting, to make sure that it's accurate, make sure that it that it's real, and that it follows what the Bible says. And then there's fifth pillar is strength and might. And it's the ability to implement, not just knowing the right things to do, but implementing them, not just knowing, but actually being able to implement, doing the right things. And that's the hard part, because that's where the illiteracy comes in. We're all so busy, we're all so overwhelmed. I mean, in the last 10 years, the confusion that comes from our media, from our politicians, various different narratives are being given and thrown in our face for us to absorb and understand, and try to rationalize. And I mean, I don't know about you, but the whole pushing the transgender agendas on our children, that was hard for me to wrap my head around. Like, why are we pushing transgender people? Even transgender people didn't understand. I talked to several of them. They didn't even understand why they're being pulled into school systems to be able to read books to children. I mean, come on. So many different things, that have been fed to us throughout the last 10 years that we had to wrap our heads around. And a lot of people have become two things: became very overwhelmed and very stressed out, very depressed, not feeling like they had a solid footing anymore on life in general, like what is going on around us, not understanding that there's spiritual warfare going on, not being guided or told about that. Even in churches, they don't talk about that very much. And then, secondly, becoming so numb to all of it that there can't possibly be a God because of all of this stuff that's going on and how I feel. I'm depressed, I'm anxious, not me, but personally, but I went through it, depressed, anxious, like how do we fix all of this that's going on? But that's where we have to start watching for signs within our own lives, not in general, not, turn off the TV for one, but not in general, but just in your own life. Look for those signs. Look for the people that you can touch in their lives, and let that flow in your life. And part of that is the sixth pillar, which is instruction, which means God God looks upon those who are seeking counsel, who are using their discretion, who do fear him, who have gained some knowledge and understanding of his ways. He will then begin to instruct you. He will instruct you in various different ways, some of which will be some correction in your life. And you have to be open to that. You have to be open to be taught, and you have to be open to be corrected. And a lot of folks, will, that's where people shut down. You may be open for most of the frilly good stuff, but when you start being corrected yourself, that's where things become a little hard, right? Nobody wants to be corrected by something they can't see. And I don't even know half the things that God probably corrected me on or moved out of my life, but he did. Um, I know that I used to be a big one for control, and I used to be a big one for um, like dealing with things through verbal controls and anger. I think I mentioned that before. And when God came into my life and lit a spark in my heart, there that was not even an option for me anymore. It wasn't even a thought in my mind, which is amazing to me. Um, that is such a huge change for me, and that was a correction that was made within me physically, and mentally, to not be that controlling agent in my life and everybody else's lives around me. Didn't matter whether it was work or because I was always, as I was from my probably early 30s, I was the one that was always in control. I was the leader of whatever was going on, whatever job I had. Primarily, I mean, I worked for board of directors, and obviously they're the leaders, but they were volunteers. So I had to guide them and help them be able to run the businesses that we were running. And um, so I was always the one that had the answers. At least I thought so. And or the one that found the answers. And so I took that and I used that in my personal life as well. I was the go-to person for a lot of people. Um, and when God lit that spark in my heart, I was no longer allowed to be that person for everyone else. I had to start walking with God, and I had to pick up my cross, and I couldn't be there for everyone else and be there for God at the same time. That wasn't possible. So part of my correction was to remove um, those kinds of things from my life. I had to remove the want to assist everything and everyone that came my way. I had to remove being the person that had all the answers, because at that point I knew I didn't anymore. I didn't have answers for anybody. I was barely able to take care of myself at some points because I was being led in a totally different direction, a direction I knew nothing about, and I had to learn very quickly. But then also, part of that is reproof, and that's the final pillar of knowledge. Reproof, which is discipline, being willing to be disciplined, not as just open to correction, which is gentle, but discipline, which can be harsh. You can be humbled by God's corrections and God's discipline. If you are not following what He believes you should be doing, things can get difficult in your life, and He will definitely make those things known to you very quickly. And if you don't catch on right away, He'll continue to discipline you until you do catch on, because this is a path that you and the divine are walking together. And so where we're at right now as a general society in the world, really, is that illiterate generation. We've lost a lot of our knowledge and our understanding. We've lost a lot of valid information. A lot of it has been corrupted, or it's been monetized, which is even sadder than all the rest. And I just want you to know, like, we have to start really looking more into the divine and more into the ways of the world. You know, what I've what I've learned on this path, one of the things that I think is interesting is that it has become that man believes he is that go between the divine and humans. He believes he has the right to monetize, a path, the way to God, and they don't have that right. No one does. It's available to all of us. It's your right to it's your birthright to find the way to God, and it's our responsibility to do that. Um, but it really, to get there, to get out of this illiteracy that we found ourselves in, to get out from underneath the patriarchal controls, is to seek the wisdom and to have humility. And those two things sometimes don't always go together, because once we start seeking the wisdom, we become arrogant and think that we know everything, and we don't. So to remain humble is extremely important. And I hope that one day we can get past all of these controls, by these systems that have been put into place that are not suiting anyone anymore. That's my wish anyway, is we could get past that. But I just want you to know, like, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're not alone. I've been there. Even this afternoon, I was feeling overwhelmed, unsure what's next, right? Because a lot of the path that people like myself are on, we are guided in various different ways, and we're led to different places that are purposeful, and we understand that. But there are a lot of days where we don't know what's coming next. We haven't been given information. We don't know what's happening. We might worry. And part of my path right now is to put that aside, to let it go, and allow my patience to build, and allow myself to keep understanding, and not want to fall back to my original nature, which is to want to control absolutely everything, to make sure that everything goes well and I understand everything. And you can't do that on God's path. You have to let it go. There's a lot of letting go on this journey. And unless you're ready to let go, like the Pharisee, he didn't want to let go of his wife. He didn't want to let go of his wealth. He didn't want to let go of his position and his status in the community and in the church. So he didn't follow Jesus. He didn't take that opportunity. And it's your birthright too. You have the right to choose him and the right to follow him. But if he returns, like in Matthew 16, where Jesus said to the disciples, where he said, "What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for the soul? Nothing. For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels, and then he will reward each person according to what they have done. Truly I tell you, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom," which is ominous. It's scary, because it is our duty to not look for the way to the real life, to look for the way to save our soul, to look for the way to walk with Jesus, to do as he did, to help him fix what's going on in the world, to just find the true death in life. Anyway, until next time, that is a big part of my story. That is exactly what we all need to do. And like I said, it's your birthright. I hope you take the opportunity to really think about this. I hope you all do. So until next time, keep healing and, seeking growth within your life and living with intention. So, and choose restoration for yourself over anything. Have a good night.